This morning we are in Genesis chapter 33, and we'll see how it goes. We might actually make a soiree into chapter 34, but we are in chapter 33, and we are continuing with the stories of Jacob. So as we've talked about in the past, the first part of Genesis focuses on 4 big events. And the rest of Genesis focuses on 4 major characters, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. And so we are right now focusing in on Jacob and seeing more about Jacob and his family life. And in the next couple of chapters, we're going to see quite a bit about Jacob's family life. But at any rate, let's go ahead and start with our read through of the chapter, Genesis chapter 33, verse 1. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 servants. He put the female servants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and he kissed him, and he wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children. Who are these with you? He asked. Jacob answered, These are the children God has graciously given your servant. Then the female servants and their children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all came Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. Esau asked, What's the meaning of all these flocks and herds I met? To find favor in your eyes, my lord, he said. But Esau said, I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. No, please, said Jacob. If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift for me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God. Now that you have received me favorably, please accept the present that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need. Because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. Then Esau said, Let us be on our way. I'll accompany you. But Jacob said to him, My Lord knows that the children are tender, and that I must care for the ewes and the cows, that are nursing their young. If they are driven hard just one day, all the animals will die. So let my Lord go on ahead of his servants, while I move along slowly at the pace of the flocks and the herds before me, and the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir. Esau said, Let me leave some of my men with you. But why do that? Jacob asked. Just let me find favor in your eyes, my lord. So that day Esau started on his way back to Seir. Jacob, however, went to Succoth, where he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock. That is why the place is called Succoth. After Jacob came from Padam Aram, he arrived safely in the city of Shechem in Canaan and camped within the side of the city. For 100 pieces of silver, he bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, the plot of ground where he pitched his tent. There he set up an altar, and he called it Elohi Israel. That is chapter 33. All right, so let's go back up here and put this in context and unpack the chapter. So you recall that when we were in chapter 32, that God tells Jacob that it's time to return home to Canaan, and he went through 20 years of working for Laban, first to pay for his 2 wives. And then he worked for Laban for another 6 years. And after doing that, he was ready to go home, and God had directed him it was time to go home. And so he starts heading home. And when he gets close to the land of Canaan, or gets in the land of Canaan, he is now most concerned about meeting his brother Esau. So he hasn't seen his brother in 20 years, and as far as he knows, Esau still wants to kill him. And why did Esau want to kill Jacob? Well, because he stole not only his birthright, but also his blessing from the father. So from his father Isaac. So Jacob had done a couple of bad things to Esau. Esau initially wanted revenge and said as soon as their father passed that he was going to hunt Jacob down and kill him. Mom Rebecca said, yeah, she's not having it. I don't want to lose both my sons. So that's when Jacob was sent away. 20 years later now, Jacob is returning. And he is apprehensive about his return and seeing Esau. So Jacob is going to grease the skids, right? He's going to do everything in his power to make it go well. Go well means that his brother is going to accept him and not kill him, right? So after traveling back, from Mesopotamia, back from Padan Aram, back from Haran, and into Canaan, modern day Israel, now Jacob gets word that actually Jacob sent servants to let Esau know that Jacob was coming home. And the servants returned, and their report to Jacob was that Esau wants to see you, and he's bringing 400 of his men with him. Now, if you haven't seen your brother in 20 years, and you hear that he's going to bring an army with him, you might be a little fearful as well. And Jacob is fearful. And again, like I said, Jacob wants to do what he can to grease the skids, to make sure that his brother receives him, wants to have him back. And how can he best do that? Well, he can share some of his blessings, some of his herds with Esau. And as we saw in chapter 32, Jacob selects a method of presenting this gift of sheep and goats and donkeys into waves, so that what Esau sees is the first group of the cattle, the sheep. Then that's one wave. And then there's another wave that comes, and that's the goats. And there's another wave that comes, and that's the donkeys and the camels. He is trying to impress his brother, but he's also trying to, like I said, prepare the way so that Esau receives Jacob favorably. So in that light, let's look at verse 1. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau. So Esau comes out to see his brother Jacob, and he's got 400 men behind him. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he, Jacob, divided the children amongst Leah, Rachel, and the 2 female servants. He put the female servants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. So it's interesting the way that he ordered them, and you could imply that this was ordered in the level of importance to Jacob. But the idea is, again, one of presenting his people, his wives and his children in waves, making it more impressive, or attempting to make it more impressive to his brother Esau. Now, remember who Esau is. Esau is this rough, tough guy. He's the hunter. He's, the self-made man. He says, if I'm hungry, I'll just go hunt and kill something myself, and I'll field dress it and cook it, and, I don't need anything else. And is Esau going to be impressed by all this pomp, by these waves of cattle, and then these waves of people? More or less, maybe less impressed than some. Again, verse 2, he put the female servants and the children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. Well, Rachel was Jacob's favorite wife, the one that he really fell in love with, and the one he thought he was marrying the first time he got married. Right. So it is possible that he he sent them in the order of importance in case Esau was still angry with him and wanted to wipe out anyone related to Jacob. He would take the female servants and their children first, and then Leah and her children next, and then so on and so on. Verse 3, he himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. So think, draw the picture in your brain. See this picture of, he hasn't seen Jacob in 20 years. Jacob is now in his 40s. And he looks like Jacob, but at the same instance, he doesn't look like Jacob because he hasn't seen him in 20 years. And here, this man is bowing down to him 7 times. 7, the number of completion. God created the world in 6 days, or the universe actually, in 6 days, rested on the 7th. 7th being the number of completions, making himself prostrate. But Jacob is presenting himself to Esau as if he was his servant, as if he was his slave. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embrace him. He threw his arms around him, kissed him, and they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children. Who are these with you? He asked. Jacob answered, they are the children God has graciously given to your servant. So again, Jacob is positioning himself as a servant of Esau. It is a matter of respect, but it's also a matter of, what's the right word? I guess offering. Verse 6, then the female servants and the children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all, Joseph and Rachel, they too bowed down. So you can see the level of pomp and circumstance that Jacob has set up here, right? It's really a matter of presentation. It's not that, all of the flocks walked in and then all the people walked in. No, it's a matter of ceremony. And like I said, it's loaded with pomp and circumstance. Verse 8, Esau asked, what's the meaning of all these flocks and herds I met? To find favor in your eyes, my lord, he said. But Esau said, I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. So Esau was already a wealthy person. He already had plenty of flocks and herds. And he tells his brother, I don't need any more. I appreciate the gift. I appreciate the sentiment. I understand, what you're doing here, but that's okay. You can keep what's yours. But then Jacob in verse 10 says, no, please. If I've found favor in your eyes, accept this gift for me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God. Oh man, this is dripping, right? Jacob is really, really painting it thick here. To see your face is like seeing the face of God. Now that you have received me favorably, please accept the present that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me and I have all that I need. Well, the thing that is good here and that actually speaks of a change going on in Jacob's life is he is to his brother acknowledging that even though Jacob had to work hard for Laban for 20 years, it's God who has blessed Jacob. That's a real indicator of progress in Jacob's life. Now, progress comes slowly sometimes, and it comes slowly. The spiritual development of Jacob comes slowly. But in this chapter, we see an important transition. And I'm not going to tell you what that transition is yet, because I want to ask you, when we get there, I want to ask you if you recognized the transition. So verse 11, please accept the present that was brought to you. For God has been gracious to me and I have all I need. And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. So in the ancient world, in their corner of the world, it was considered to be rude or a slap in the face to not accept a gift that was insisted on. So, if you were just exchanging pleasantries and you weren't really serious about the gift and it was rejected, you'd say, oh, okay, all right, no problem. But if you kept on insisting that the gift be taken instead of coming to loggerheads, it was considered rude. It was considered bad form to not accept the gift. So Esau backs off and says, okay, all right, thank you. Please accept a present that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need. And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. Then Esau said, let us be on our way. I'll accompany you. Well, this is kind of interesting, and it is really a tactical mistake. Maybe is the word tactical the right? It's really a life decision mistake for Jacob to do what he did here. My reading of this is that Jacob, even though Esau seemed to be gracious at this point, seemed to be glad to see his brother, Jacob is still wary of these 400 men and what might happen with these 400 men. And so he's basically telling Esau, no, you go on ahead. So Esau is making an assumption that Jacob is going to come back to his home in Seir, which is some distance away in southern Canaan. So you got to travel there. It's not just like around the block. And Jacob is telling him to go on ahead. It's okay. It's okay. I've got young flocks. I've got young children, and they just don't travel fast. And if I try and push them, I'm going to lose some of the flock. Verse 12, then Esau said, let us be on our way. I'll accompany you. But Jacob said to him, my Lord knows that the children are tender, and that I must care for the ewes and the cows that are nursing their young. If they are driven hard just one day, all the animals will die. Again, a little hyperbole, a little exaggeration here. He might lose some animals if he drives them too hard, but he's not going to lose all of them. But that's what he says. If they are driven hard just one day, all the animals will die. All the animals that are nursing, all the animals that are young won't be able to keep up. They'll be left behind and they'll die. So let my Lord go on ahead of his servant, still using servant language, while I move along slowly at the pace of the flocks and herds before me and the pace of the children until I come to my Lord in Seir. So Jacob tells Esau, yes, we're going to come with you. We're going to meet you in Seir, but you go on ahead. Don't wait for us. We have to travel slowly. So don't wait for us, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Esau then, in verse 15, responds, let me leave some of my men with you. So Esau knows the country, and he knows that it's hard. And he knows there's a lot of rough terrain out there, and possibly dangers. Could be robbers. And so he wants to provide a level of protection for his brother's flocks, and his brother's family. But Jacob says, but why do that? Just let me find favor in the eyes of my Lord. And so using our vernacular or current phraseology, we would say, well, that's not necessary. It's not, you don't need to do that. It's okay. We'll be just fine. But why do that? Jacob asked. Just let me find favor in the eyes of my Lord. Again, Jacob is making a mistake here. He's making an error that impacts his family negatively. Verse 16, so that day Esau started on his way back to Seir. Jacob, however, went to Succoth, where he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock. This is why the place is called Succoth. So Succoth is Hebrew for shelters or booths. And you have today, modern Jewry has the festival of Sukkoth, or the festival of booths, where, in remembrance of the trek that the Israelites made across the desert, the 40 years in the desert to get to the promised land, they had to build temporary shelters along the way. They didn't really have RVs back then, right? So they built these booths, and these booths, like 4 posts and then branches covering the top, branches and leaves covering the top, creating a bit of a shelter from the sun. Well, that's what modern Jews do today that celebrate the festival of Sukkot. They will build a booth in the backyard. In Israel, you'll see on the apartment buildings that have balconies, people will build booths on the balconies too, and they sleep there for, I think it's 2-3 nights. They'll sleep out in the booth. I work with a lot of NBC personnel, and one of the guys that I work regularly with is an Orthodox Jew, and he was telling me that he was so pleased because when he called me, we were having a business meeting. When he called me, he was in his Sukkoth, he was in his booth, and his computer was able to hit his Wi-Fi just fine. So that's kind of funny. All right. So, verse 16 again. So that day Esau started on his way back to Seir. Jacob, however, went to Sukkoth, where he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock. That is why the place is called Sukkoth. After Jacob came from Padan Aram, he arrived safely in the city of Shechem in Canaan and camped within the side of the city. So Jacob is making a stop. He's not making a beeline to Seir. And it could be that Jacob, I haven't been here for 20 years. I kind of want to look around. I kind of want to see what's out here. I want to see how things have changed. I don't imagine that they changed very much in 20 years, but he doesn't, like I said, make a beeline straight to Seir. He's not quick on his brother's heels. He lets him go on ahead, and he spends some time in Shechem. And at verse 18, after Jacob came from Padan Aram, so it's basically including the whole trek, right? So he leaves Haran, which Padan Aram is the region in Mesopotamia that Haran is located in. So he comes from Padan Aram, and he arrives safely at the city of Shechem, and he decides to spend some time there. And he camps within sight of the city. Verse 19, for 100 pieces of silver he bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, the plot of ground where he pitched his tent. So for whatever reason, he decided that he wanted to actually own the spot where they were camping. He decided to buy it, presumably because he thought he was going to be there a while. Again, why wasn't he, trying to get to Seir? He was basically saying, I'm going to take my time. We'll get there. We'll see Esau again, but I'm going to take my time getting there. So he bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, the plot of ground where he pitched his tent. And there he set up an altar, and he called it El Elohi Israel. All right, so I mentioned previously that in this chapter we see a transition in Jacob. We see a transition in Jacob's life. And what is that transition? Previous to this chapter, when Jacob talked about God, he referred to him as the God of Abraham, or he referred to him as the God of Isaac. But he never referred to God as the God of Jacob. He never referred to Jehovah as his God. It was the God of his fathers, not his God. And right here we see this transition. So he buys the plot of land so that he has ownership in the ground that they're camping on. And then he sets up an altar. Remember, Abraham was the altar builder. And wherever Abraham pitched his tent and intended to stay for a while, he would build an altar. The purpose of the altar was to worship God. What did the altar look like? We don't really know, besides that it was likely a pile of stones. But then he names it. He names this altar, and he names it El Elohi Israel. And El Elohi Israel stands for, or means in Hebrew, God. That's the El. El is God. God, Elohi, is the God of Israel. Now, today, we would likely read right over the top of that, right? Because Israel, because the country, the modern day country, is called Israel. And so we accept that, right? But remember that in chapter 32, when Jacob was wrestling the angel of the Lord, a pre-incarnate Jesus, he gets a new name, or he's given a new name, and the name is Israel. And what Jacob is saying in naming this altar is that this place, this altar, is of the God of Israel, his God. And of course, there's an implication that, there's a future coming nation of Israel. There's, the Israelite people that haven't been born yet, that God is going to continue to bless Jacob, just like he blessed Abraham and just like he blessed Isaac. He told Jacob that his descendants would be greater than the number of grains of sand in the sea, stars in the sky. And that hasn't happened yet. But what has happened is that Jacob is in this growth period, the spiritual growth period. And just as he recognized that he has been blessed because of God, and not just simply because he's a self-made man and it's the fruit of all of his own personal labors. Here he recognizes that God is his God. So he is at the same time the God of Abraham, and he is at the same time the God of Isaac. And now he is also at the same time, the same God is now the God of Jacob, the God of Israel. Any comments, questions before we move on to chapter 34?
I've got one, Perry. When I look at maps, I'm seeing Sukkoth almost over to Egypt, but I'm also seeing Shechem over by Jordan, or by Jericho, north of Jericho. So did he move all of his people and everything all the way over to the western part of Israel, and then he went all the way back to Jericho?
Near Jericho, actually,
near Jericho and Shechem.
Yeah, in the Jordan Valley, yes, he did. And
he went a long way. My goodness.
He did. So I mean, it's a real divergence from the path to Seir. He could have made a straight path, or straight line between 2 points, but he didn't. He waylaid. And it's to his family's detriment, as we're going to soon see. Good question, Tom. All right, so let's go ahead and do a read-through of Genesis chapter 34. Now, I'll have to tell you that in the book of Genesis, there are 3 dark chapters, difficult chapters. Chapter 34 is one of them. This is not a light and bright chapter. This is a dark chapter. And again, if Jacob wouldn't have stopped in Shechem, none of what happens in chapter 34 would have happened. Verse 1. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah had born to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. When Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, the ruler of that area, saw her, he took her and raped her. His heart was drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. And Shechem said to his father Hamor, "Get me this girl as my wife." When Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the field with his livestock, so he did nothing about it until they came home. Then Shechem's father, Hamor, came out to talk with Jacob. Meanwhile, Jacob's son had come in from the fields as soon as they had heard what had happened. They were shocked and furious because Shechem had done an outrageous thing in Israel by sleeping with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done. But Hamor said to them, "My son, Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife. Intermarry with us. Give us your daughters and take our daughters for yourselves. You can settle among us. The land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, and acquire property in it." Then Shechem said to Dinah's father and brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and I will give you whatever you ask. Make the price for the bride, the gift I am to bring, as great as you like, and I'll pay whatever you ask me. Only give me the young woman as my wife." Because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamor. They said to them, "We can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who's not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. We will enter into an agreement with you on one condition only, that you become like us by circumcising all your males. Then we will give you our daughter and take your daughters for ourselves. We'll settle among you and become one people with you. But if you will not agree to be circumcised, we will take our sister and go." Their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. The young man, who was the most honored of all his father's family, lost no time in doing what they said, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of the city to speak to the men of their city. "These men are friendly towards us," they said. "Let them live in our land and trade in it. The land is plenty of room for them. We can marry their daughters and they can marry ours. But the men will agree to live with us as one people only on the condition that our males be circumcised as they themselves are. Won't their livestock, their property, and all their other animals become ours? So let us agree to their terms, and they will settle among us." All the men who went out of the city gate agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took a sword and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and donkeys and everything else of theirs in the city and out in the fields. They carried off all the wealth and all their women and children, taking as plunder everything in their houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and the Perizzites, the people living in this land. We are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." But they replied, "Should we have treated our sister like a prostitute?" All right. Excuse me. Like I said, dark chapter, not a happy chapter. And if Jacob hadn't stopped in Shechem, it would have never happened. If he would have made a beeline for Seir, if he would have stayed with his brother to return to his brother's home, if he would have allowed his brother's 400 men or a portion of those 400 men to come with them on their trek to Seir, none of this would have ever happened. But for reasons that we don't understand completely, Jacob denied all that and said, no, there's no reason to go to all that trouble. And Jacob took his time getting there and spent some time in Shechem. All right, back up to the top. Let's start to unpack. Now Dinah. All right, so Dinah is the only daughter of Jacob that's mentioned by name. We can assume that there were other daughters, but Dinah is the only one that is actually mentioned by name. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, or the daughter Leah had born to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. If we're going to be a while, I might as well meet the local ladies. Let's go to the local spring, to the local watering trough, and let's get friendly. Let's start to meet people. In the process, Shechem, the local prince and ruler of the area, he sees Dinah and lusts after her, kidnaps her, and rapes her. Verse 2, when Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, the ruler of that area, saw her, he took her and raped her. His heart was drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke to her tenderly. He's doing things backwards, right? He's supposed to court or asked to court Dinah. Instead, he takes her. And then he falls in love with her. And then he doesn't want to give her up. So likely he's brought her into his house. Now, he could have already had a harem, and he's planning to add Dinah to his harem, but he wants to marry her. He now wants her to be his wife because he's fallen in love with her. And that's why when the brothers go to rescue her, when they go to wipe out the city, they grab their daughter from Shechem's household. His heart was drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. And Shechem said to his father Hamor, "Get me this girl as my wife." Now, we don't know for sure, but it's a possibility that Hamor is more or less retired, that he was in the ruler job, that was his job description previously, and now his son, Shechem, has taken over that role. And so Hamor is the career diplomat. And that's why Shechem sends his father to go and negotiate on his behalf. Get me this girl as my wife. So Shechem wants Dinah and basically is saying to his father Hamor, I don't care what it costs me. I want her as my wife. Verse 5, when Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the field with his livestock, so he did nothing about it until they came home. Remember what I said about bad news doesn't get better with age and no surprises? Well, Jacob didn't do that here. He sat on the news. And so when his sons came from the field and they heard what happened to their sister, they were absolutely irate. Jacob could have handled this completely different. He could have traveled out to the fields and said, "Sons, I have something to tell you. It is not good news. Something has happened, but I don't want you to react. I want you to listen. Your sister's been defiled." But that's not what Jacob did. Bad news doesn't get better with age. When Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the field and with his livestock, so he did nothing about it until they came home. Then Shechem's father Hamor went out to talk with Jacob. We're going to have a man-to-man conversation here. Does Hamor know Jacob? Well, chances are they met when they did the land transaction, when Jacob paid 100 pieces of silver for the plot of land that he was camping on. He likely met Hamor through that exchange. So Hamor thinks that he has a personal relationship. He at least knows he's known by Jacob, and he goes out to negotiate. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons had come in from the field as soon as they had heard what had happened. They were shocked and furious. because Shechem had done an outrageous thing in Israel by sleeping with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not have been done. So Shechem had defiled their sister, and they were outraged. Again, but Jacob could have controlled how his sons learned of this information. He decided to do nothing until they got back. When they got back, Hamer was there. No doubt the boys come in from the field and say, is that Hamer's? Is that Shechem's father? What is he doing here? And one of the servants says, well, I got some bad news. Your sister's been raped. I'd be furious too. I'd be furious if I learned that information, but I'd be even more furious. I'd be more outraged if it came out, the information came out like that. And my father didn't. My father knew, but he didn't tell me himself. Verse 7, meanwhile, Jacob's sons had come in from the fields. As soon as they had heard what had happened, they were shocked and furious because Shechem had done an outrageous thing in Israel, talking about the family of Jacob, by sleeping with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done. Verse 8, but Hamer said to them, my son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. He's trying to gloss over a very bad thing. He doesn't want charges brought against his son. Look, let's take care of this, right? My son loves your daughter. He wants to take your daughter. She's a beautiful girl, and he wants to take her as a wife. My son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife. Intermarry with us. Give us your daughters and take our daughters for yourselves. Now, this is a problem because the righteous line of Israel, the line of Abraham, Isaac, now Jacob, is not to intermarry with the Canaanite peoples. Remember when it was time for Isaac to get married, what did they do? Abraham sent his servant back to Haran to find a suitable wife from among his family, not the Canaanites. Jacob travels to Laban, spends time with Laban in Haran. And it wasn't the whole justification, but what Rebekah told Isaac was he needs to find a wife from our people, not the Canaanite people. And here, Hamer is suggesting that they intermarry, which is actually a problem. And the sons address that, although that's really more of a smokescreen. Verse 10, you can settle among us. The land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, and acquire property in it. Look, become one of us. Become one of our society. We would benefit from having you here. You would benefit from us. This is a symbiotic relationship. We can become one people. You and your family can just join our family. We can become one. Verse 11, then Shechem said to Dinah's father and brothers, let me find favor in your eyes, and I will give you whatever you ask. Make the price for the bride, or bride price. Make the price of the bride and the gift I am to bring as great as you like. I'll pay whatever you ask me. Only give me the young woman as my wife. I mean, Shechem is really struck. He wants Dinah bad. Went about it completely the wrong way. Being the local ruler, probably thought that he had a right to take anyone he wanted, but not from the family of Jacob, not from the family of Israel. Make the price for the bride and the gift I am to bring as great as you like. I'll pay whatever you ask me. Verse 13. Because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamer. Ooh. So they put on a false front. They flew a false flag. They went into negotiations in a friendly manner, but they absolutely had ulterior motive. Where did they learn this deceitfulness? Could it be that Jacob spent too much time with Laban? Too much time in the University of Laban at Haran, and that the sons had learned being deceitful from their father Jacob. They said to them, "We can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who is not circumcised." They made circumcision the issue. That would be a disgrace to us. We will enter into agreement with you only on one condition, that you become like us by circumcising all your males. Now, interesting thing, because we're talking about a condition that likely the sons of Jacob, the brothers of Dinah, didn't think the men would agree to. You want to cut my what? Shechem and Hamor must have been very charismatic people, because they go back to the city gate. And you know, in ancient times, that's where the elders sat. That was the place of commerce. If you had business to get done, you would go to the city gate, and you would glad hand, and you would rub elbows, and you would make pleas and proposals. And that's exactly what Hamor and Shechem end up doing. So the brothers say, "Then we will give our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves," which would never happen. "We'll settle among you and become one people with you," which will never happen. They had no intent to do that. "But if you will not agree to be circumcised, we'll take our sister and go." They know that they've got leverage. The leverage is Dinah. And Shechem wants Dinah bad. So when they say that, "If you do not agree to be circumcised, we'll take our sister and go," this was an ultimatum that Shechem couldn't accept, couldn't let happen. He didn't want Dinah to leave. Verse 18, their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. The young man, who was the most honored of all his father's family, lost no time in doing what they said, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city to speak to the men of their city. "These men are friendly towards us," they said. Again, it's deceitfulness, right? The sons of Jacob were putting on a false front. "These men are friendly towards us," they said. Let them live in our land and trade in it. The land has plenty of room for them. We can marry their daughters and they can marry ours. But the men will agree to live with us as one people only on the condition that our males be circumcised as they are." Oh, wow. Well, what you said, Hamor, what you said, Shechem, makes good sense. Yeah, let them stay. Let them live in the land. Let us jointly prosper together. And you want to do what? They'll only intermarry with us. They'll only stay here. They'll only become part of us on one condition. They want us to become circumcised like they are. Again, those two must have been pretty convincing, because in verse 24, all the men who went out of the city gate agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. Wow. Like I said, they must have been very convincing. Also, I think that it was a matter of economics. So Jacob had great herds and great flocks. So they all thought to themselves that we could prosper from this relationship. We could all benefit. It's to our own joint benefit. We've got the land. You've got the herds. Let's do this thing. So all the men went out of the city gate and agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. Tom, do you have a comment?
I think you missed 23. I think that's important here.
Won't their, oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Yes, I did. Won't their livestock, their property, and all their other animals become ours? Right. So over time, by intermarrying and paying the bride price and the dowry, their flocks, Jacob's flocks, would become theirs. Yes, thank you, Tom, for bringing me back, because I did skip that, and it is an important point. Won't their livestock, their property, and all their other animals become ours? So let us agree to their terms, and they will settle among us. Again, right? This is a benefit. Gets down to economics. We got the land, they got the herds. We will all benefit by this relationship. So every male in the city was circumcised. Verse 25, 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain. Well, yes, of course they're in pain. It's only been 3 days since they were circumcised. The brothers decided to take advantage of the situation because all of the men of the city are on the mend. 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers. Now, the important point here is that they are full blood brothers of Dinah, right? So Simeon and Levi are sons of Jacob and Leah. So Dinah is their full blood sister. 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house, and they left. Then the rest of Jacob's clan, the sons of Jacob, came upon the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and donkeys and everything else of theirs in the city and out in the fields. They took it all. They carried off all their wealth and all their women and children, taking as plunder everything in the houses. Do you get the sense of the completeness of the plunder that went on with the rest of Jacob's children after Simeon and Levi took revenge and killed all the males in the city, including Hamor and Shechem? Put them to the sword, which is a flowery way of saying they killed them. This was not right. This was not God's plan. God didn't want them to take revenge. God didn't want this situation to happen at all. Jacob actually caused this situation to occur because he waylaid in getting to meeting up with Esau and Seir. None of this should have happened. And now what we see is a situation of the growing magnitude of sin, where one sin builds upon the other sin, builds upon another sin, and such and so forth. So now the sons of Jacob have committed murder and have wiped out the people of Shechem. Jacob knows, he at least recognizes, they've done a bad thing and it's not going to go well for them. Verse 30, then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and the Perizzites, the people living in this land. They're all going to know what we did. We are few in numbers, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed. And what did the brothers say? But they replied, should we have treated our sister like a prostitute? In other words, should we have not taken revenge? Should we have allowed that to happen? Should we have turned our backs and looked the other way? And of course, they were unwilling to do that. It's a difficult thing. I, as a father, if one of my daughters had been raped, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know how I would have reacted. Would I have forgiven the man? Would I have sought retribution? Turn with me to Romans chapter 12 in the few minutes that we've got left. Turn with me to Romans chapter 12, and let's read the words of Paul. Romans chapter 12, and we're looking at verse 17. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. That is a tough thing to do, to leave room for God's wrath. In other words, everyone is going to get their comeuppance. Everyone is going to be standing before the judgment seat, before the throne of God, and be judged for their actions. Allow God the room to act. Nobody's sins will go unpunished. Paul, when he says, for it is written, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord, is actually referring to a passage in Deuteronomy. So if you'll turn with me to Deuteronomy chapter 32, so back towards Genesis. Genesis chapter 32, and we're looking at verse 35. It is mine to avenge, I will repay. In due time their foot will slip. Their day of disaster is near, and their doom rushes upon them. The Lord will vindicate his people and relent concerning his servants when he sees their strength is gone, and no one is left, slave or free. So Paul is actually quoting or referring to this passage here in Deuteronomy. It is mine to avenge, I will repay. Like I said, it's a dark chapter, and Jacob is right. The local Canaanite people or the rest of the people in Canaan will hear what they have done, and they'll either be afraid or they'll be angry or they'll be both. And if they should join together, they could come together, or they could march against Jacob, and they would be completely wiped out. Jacob understands the geopolitical situation for his local region. And he didn't ask his sons to do that. But again, sin building upon sin. And it started with Jacob waylaying in Shechem and not making a beeline for Seir, or following his brother Esau, or allowing any of his men to stay behind to protect them. Closing thoughts, comments?
Well, Jacob certainly has a lot of things, I'm sure, on his mind all the time, because he has these sons of Israel and the daughters and everything else such as that. He has a huge family to look after, and yet still tending toward his own needs. It's really interesting watching some of these people that have some of these circumstances going on.
Well, yeah, and real life situations, right? At the same time, John, we're seeing Jacob's spiritual development, and he is gradually becoming a changed person. But it's oftentimes one step forward, two steps back, one step forward, two steps back. So good point. Thank you for that. All right, gentlemen, please have a good rest of your week and go with God.
Thank you, Barry. You too.
Barry.
Thanks, Barry.